welcome back to another special edition of the Vulcan Nation podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Barnhart, Director of Alumni Relations. With me today, we have our first global guest. So this is like new territory for us. We're in international waters today. But I'm very pleased to bring on Chris Buffington, class of 2007. He's the Global Director for Men's Leather Goods at Salvatore Ferragamo. Chris, thanks for joining us today, man.
All right, I'm very happy to be here. Thank you for having me on. This means a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. It's good to catch up and, glad you're here. And I should mention also that Chris is one of our inaugural under 40 class recipients at Cal U from 2019. So we're, really pleased to have you here. We like to get down to business on the podcast, man, and let our guests introduce themselves to our listeners, kind of like your background, how you got to Cal U, kind of who you were there and where it's brought you to today.
All right, definitely get started. So again, my name is Chris Buffington. I grew up in Pittsburgh, and I had an opportunity after high school, and I was looking at some different places to go and extend my education. And one of the first places I looked at was Cal U, and truthfully, after I visited Cal, I cut the rest of everybody else. That moment, it's actually funny because as it prolongs in my career, I've held a title of being a buyer for quite some time, which basically means you have to know what you know and see something and like it and boom and know. And to me, that was Cal. So it was the first time on campus, first time speaking with certain, relations, people, and they just immediately, that feeling, like you just know that it's right. It was right for me. So it was pretty easy selection and choice, and I'm very happy to have done so.
Really, it's awesome to hear that, and I know that feeling, that click. It just feels like home, right? Kind of, it's hard to describe. If most of our listeners probably are in the same boat, but for outsiders, it might be a little hard to describe there. So we like on the show to, kind of unlock your story, right? And specifically, your time at Cal U, how maybe it shaped the narrative to where you are and all the experiences that you've had since then to today. Maybe like the skills or maybe some of the pathways that your time at Cal U helped you unlock.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, starting with Cal and kind of the path that it put me on was something really, really valuable. I mean, basically what Cal gave to me and what it represented was really just this incredible balance. So for me, I grew up in Pittsburgh. My family lived in Pittsburgh. I still, I was paying for my education. I mean, nobody paid for any of this for me. So I needed to go back and forth and actually work on weekends as well. So the location of it was really great as like a first standpoint of everything. The second part of it was, really, I thought to me, like the people were so important. So I think that goes with a lot of different aspects, but at Cal, it was something different. And I felt immediately as if I didn't need to be somebody else. I felt like I could be me. And all that did was just be able to grab onto and hang on to other people's experiences and then reshape yourself. There were so many things I learned about the people that were there. I mean, everybody's background was different, but yet it was a very humbling experience. I mean, I remember I was driving like a 2001 Maxima. I bought this 2001 Maxima. It was like 6, 7. So it's like 6-year-old car. I felt like I had the coolest car in the lot almost. I mean, it's a humble place. And I love that so much just because, just people down to earth. People were super, super cool. You learned a lot from everybody. Nobody was pretentious. That to me was like, no matter where you went to class, you went to a party, you walked around campus, you knew somebody and somebody was willing to say hello. And I thought that in a campus as large as it is with the number of people that were there, it was pretty amazing how I felt as if it was relatively a small area. And that was, for me personally, great. And I thought that one thing that Cal does that other places don't is it really limits the noise and limits the distractions. So I can't speak for everybody, but for me, I came from Pittsburgh, a relatively larger city, my sister went to NYU. I know people that have had like big city college mixtures.
Sure.
It wouldn't have been right for me. For me, I kind of needed to be in a place that my focus was a combination between bettering myself as a person, but then also obviously education-wise. With all that distraction, for me, sometimes can be really hard. So I thought what Cal did a great job of was you never needed something. I mean, there was a place to get anything you could have needed, but there wasn't this excess of things. And because of the lack of excess, it really helped me focus in a lot more on, on your studies. And again, doing things around campus, being more involved, intramurals, just spending a lot more time with family or with friends. Really, that was really great. I would also say that one thing that was really important for me during my time was the concept of what the Jefferson apartments represented. So a lot of people, obviously, in my generation, I guess, or my classes, would have said the same. But, Jefferson, or what became Vulcan Village, that was as much of an interaction, as much of an experience as actual college itself too, just because it was a little distant, it wasn't too far, but it was perfect a way, honestly, to turn from being, the best way I can describe it is you almost became from a teenager to an adult, because you really felt like you were on your own, and you had that experience. But, I mean, I don't know how everyone else did it. For me, I threw my hat in the bag. I just was like, all right, I want to live at Jefferson. This place looks great. Here we go. And all of a sudden I showed up one day, and I don't know if you remember this guy. His name's Jason Swerzinski. He's the first person. Ski's the first person I see, and he's all giddy and excited, and he's like super happy. And my dad's looking at me like, "Do you know this guy?" And I'm like, "I don't have a clue who this guy is." But obviously, he had access to the listing of where people were. So it became, but it was like that. It was literally within seconds. All of a sudden, I had a roommate, I had a friend, I had a place, and we're set and ready to go. And I guess the last thing I would say, which was really helpful career path wise, was, I had a lot on my mind at the time, and I really was curious about writing. So I began writing for the Cal Times, and it wasn't this pressure situation. It was more of, when I felt really, interested in something, I had an outlet in order to be able to provide it. Now, I don't consider myself some incredible writer by any means, but it really did help shape something. And to this day, I still use that skill set a lot. But I had the opportunity to do so. It wasn't like, okay, well, you're not in this class or this or do this. It was more like, all right, let me read it. If we like it, we'll print it. And it turned out there was probably about like 4 or 5 articles that I was able to have printed. And, to this day, I still have them, and they still mean something to me.
No, that's cool. And that's those parts of the story, your story are, I think, what a lot of alumni shared, whether it's, it may not be the same exact experience, but those things like moving to Jefferson and having that modicum of adulthood and that transition. I think that, that those things, classroom stuff definitely, can prepare you for whatever, but a lot of times the outside of classroom things are really what mold you as a human and help you kind of transcend to that next level of your path or your story. So that's cool to hear. But speaking of like Ski and folks that helped, every story has a supporting cast, right? So who's your supporting cast at your Cal U time? Whether it's classes, professors, staff members, your friends, folks that kind of stuck with you then and maybe are still in your life and kind of supporting you today.
I mean, to this one, this is a long list, and I'm gonna feel terrible because I know someone's gonna text me and be like, "Bro, what happened?"
Yeah, why'd you leave me out, bro?
Yeah. So I guess the easiest way to start is, I have to give a shout out to my wife, to Eftahia. Our last name at the time was Barron. Now it's Buffington. It's my last name. But we met at Cal U, and truthfully, there's no way in the world I'd be where I am without her. She is probably the strongest person I know, and super solid, and has just been there for me in so many ways. So obviously, my wife first and foremost. I would say from a faculty standpoint, Dr. Lazarchek really always stood out to me, and it's something that I really find to be an important factor in life these days. Is Dr. Lazarchek, she wasn't easy to go to class with. We had very much a love-hate relationship. I even think that maybe one of my articles was written about some interactions that we had. But what was amazing about having her as a professor was just that she challenged you. And, in this world, you think that, you think you're special sometimes and you're not. You really have to prove yourself. And there's going to be a lot of times when people are going to tell you, well, look, frankly, this just isn't good enough. And she really pushed me from an academic standpoint. And at the time, obviously you're going to catch feelings, right? But when looking back at it, and after just very shortly after graduating and everything, I realized just how valuable her experience was and how much that she gave to me. And to this day, I still interact with her. And I believe she is retired, but I wish her all the best. She was great. So. And after that, like, I got a laundry list of some people, and I have to mention as many as I can. So one, obviously, and so many of them are revolving around Jefferson people who I lived with. And even though they didn't even live in our apartment, technically they did. If anybody who's ever lived there, there was like, you had A, B, C, and D, most places. So you had 4 rooms. We even had E and F because we had 2 couches, and we always had some people over spending the night, or somebody just didn't want to go back into town or whatever. So one of them obviously is Jason Swerzinski. He was the first person I met when I was there. He's a roommate for me for a long time. Seth Williams, he taught me a lot about multitasking as soon as I got there, because again, some people just, you're not familiar with how quickly life can hit you, balancing all these different things. You're like, oh, I got this, and all of a sudden you don't got this. So he was really important. I have a friend, Matt Eaton, who I lived with for a long time. I don't know if you know Matt.
I know Matt very well.
Great dude. He actually has come to visit me in Florence. So he's come to visit me in Italy. I've had him stay here, which was great. A girl named Jill Kreller, she was wonderful. Brian Sten, Brad Fox, he's probably still counting some of my poker money. So if you catch him on here, make sure that he pays up a little bit. Guy Derek Hunsinger, he was somebody I lived with. He was a Philly guy. Naturally, I'm from Pittsburgh, so I bleed black and gold. We're gonna have our differences, but solid person. A guy, Eric Smith. Eric Smith is actually, he was a little younger. He came in a little later while I was there, but this guy really pursuing his passion on the golf course and working through that, which I really think is commendable. Friend Greg Panchek and his wife Kayla, Ryan Burns, Chris Blocky. But I have to mention the 2 people that were the most valuable or the most important to me. Was one, actually I met them both on the same day. It was the first day I ever arrived at Cal. So I went to class, I came back to my room, and all of a sudden I was like, is one of you my roommate? And it turned out he was. His name was Dale Kreller, and the guy next to him was Jake Armstrong. And both of those guys had a tremendous effect on me from just from a development standpoint. Before I got to Cal U, I didn't have a clue about music, really. Right? I mean, I just listened to hip hop all the time. So, I mean, I was just 24/7 hardcore gangster rap all the time. Okay. So all of a sudden, I meet Dale, and Dale's like, what, you don't know about Led Zeppelin? You don't know about the Beatles? You don't know? I'm like, yeah, I heard about all these people. He's like, yeah, but you don't know anything about them. Like, sit down. Right. So I started listening to everything, and what his thing was, and this is something that I think is very valuable and what you learn and experience in college was, yeah, the music is unbelievable. And to this day, I love that. Some Red Hot Chili Peppers, The Doors, a lot of things that he played, but it was more of understanding like the history behind all this in the past, and really having a better understanding of, cultural events that went on maybe, a couple years before you were born, because truthfully at the end, I really didn't have that much. I mean, okay, yeah, about history, but even recent history and things like that, it wasn't. So I learned a lot from them. And then the other guy I mentioned was Jake Armstrong. And truthfully, if you ever saw me on campus, you probably saw this 6'4", blonde-haired guy sitting next to me most times. We were pretty much inseparable, and to this day, he's still a very close friend of mine. In fact, I would honestly nominate him to come and speak to you, because he's been very successful post-college. He's opened a bunch of restaurants. He's married, he has a few children, and just honestly super proud of this guy. So he was really great. So I know I forgot a couple people out there, but these are some of the people that definitely have shaped my thing there. I hope I mentioned Ryan Burns and Chris Plocky. If I didn't, like those two, they never were my roommates, but they were as close to brothers with me as anybody.
No, that's cool. And I think that's like, my experience is very similar. Like you find those people that like put you on basically, whether it's music or some other kind of culture or some other kind of food. And I think that is like, what really makes you grow as a person, especially in your college experience. So it's cool to hear that, from multiple respects. So thank you definitely for sharing that with us. This is the fun part now. We get to transition into the cool stuff. Not the formal kind of thing on the podcast where we talk about your story isn't fun, but this is our kind of our lightning round. So we always like to kind of dig a little deeper into your CalU experience. So before we get there though, what's the coolest part of your job?
So coolest part of my job is getting a chance to work globally. That's something that I never got a chance to do before. And just to have the interaction from so many different regions of the world, that to me is truly the best. I know we spit pretty quickly, so excuse me. I'm going to go back just for a moment if you don't mind, and just
that's fine.
Just tell you exactly what I do, because unfortunately I don't even think I said it. So basically, what my job is I oversee all the merchandising for men's leather goods for Salvatore Ferragamo globally, and it's based out of Florence, Italy. So what happens more or less, if I could break this down in a very easy term, when you do merchandising, and this is all fashion related, just for people that weren't aware. So when you break down merchandising, you're wondering to yourself, like you walk inside a store, right? It doesn't matter what store it is. It could be a Gap, it could be a Walmart, it could be wherever. You wonder, how the heck did that product get there? And pretty much my job is, in a nutshell, to try to get the right product in the right place at the right time for the right price. So pretty much what my job is that I constantly have to be ahead of trends, right? So it's real easy sometimes in order to say like, oh, okay, I saw 3 people walking down the street in high tops. Okay, high tops are in. You have to be the one thinking about those high tops before those people put the high tops on, in a way, right? So you're constantly ebbing and flowing, and it's all calculated risk. It's all understanding clients and understanding people, and I think that is something that is just, to me it's fascinating. It's something that I still love to this day so much, and it's something I enjoy. Is really, you almost have to be constantly psychoanalyzing different customer bases to understand what they want next, right? Because everybody is where they are today, but what do they want next, and how do you even know? Well, it takes a lot. So a big part of it is interaction with different teams. I'm one person, but I have a team in Japan, one in Southeast Asia, Hong Kong, in Korea, in Latin America, in New York City, and takes the whole country, in all of Europe, places in Northern Africa, in the Middle East. So all these teams I'm interacting with on a pretty much weekly basis, and understanding like where they're going market-wise. I also follow like the business, and I'm tracking the business constantly from like a numerical standpoint. So the job itself is like, all right, half right brain, half left brain. Some people are a little more left, some people are a little more right. You have to be dead center, okay? Meaning at one point on the right, on like pretty much on one side, I'm analytical. At some point, like you at times, you don't know if you're selling chairs or tables or fashion. You understand, okay, I bought this much, or this much is out there, and I want to make sure that we don't exceed a certain amount, because then you obviously lose profitability. On the other side of it is super free thought, whiteboard creative, because I'm dealing nothing but with like on one side I have the markets who are buying stuff, on the other things I have the designers who I work with day in and day out. So I'm really kind of the mouthpiece to the designers. I really guide them on what to design, because for them, they have ideas and concepts, and that's great, but at the end of the day, if I don't feel that there's a market for what they're designing, then unfortunately I have to tell them that they have to adjust a little bit. So I'm the one that have to say that. And that's really kind of the job of the merchandiser, is you are acting as a voice of the people, But how do you even know what the people want? Well, it's because you're studying them constantly. So the one thing that I always ask everybody who works for me to do, and it's the first thing I always ask first day, is always, to take their heart and kind of leave it at the door. Because your heart, I mean, like, think about relationships in a way. Your heart tends to get you in trouble a little bit, right? If you're thinking in your mind all the time, your mind isn't going to lie to you. So, for me, it can be challenging because I love fashion. I love the product that you're around, but at the same time, for my demographic, for who I am, for my income level, for all these things, I might not necessarily be the exact target that we're going for. In a weird way, that actually makes it a lot easier, because if you are one who are constantly super invested like that from a heart standpoint, it can be challenging in order to make sure that you have the right product for the customers that you're going for. So that was like something that I picked up and I began to learn during my career path in America. This is post-Cal. But now, all of a sudden, I got to apply that same concept, not only just to the Americans that I'm relatively familiar with, but now to all these different regions throughout the world. So I've been doing this now for about 4 years, and I've learned a lot. And it's a daily process, but I like to think I'm okay at it, and I enjoy it a lot.
No, that's awesome. And I kind of imagine that, like, trying to balance like the creative side with your designers, and then like matching the materials there, and keeping, and then on top of, like, you're talking about folks from every corner of the globe, trying to, probably deal with like cultural differences and things like that. So it's really cool to see all that kind of blended in one position, because we don't really typically think of traditional like marketing roles like that a lot, where it's like maybe account management, or you're just managing designers. But it's pretty cool to see all that combined, and like you said, kind of dead center, left brain, right brain kind of thing. That's pretty neat to see it all come together.
Yeah, they never, truthfully, at the end, and this is something I really would love, I would hope that, some of the students listen to and hear these words, is that, nobody gave me a blueprint to this whatsoever. Absolutely. If I could give any advice, if I could give some advice, I would probably just say it was like when I was in, I was in school, and I was studying business with a concentration in marketing, obviously a lot of classes with Dr. Lazarchuk, who I mentioned. There's a million businesses out there. It's so challenging. I can only imagine as a kid, as a guy, like, going in there. No wonder I was like, what the heck do I do? Right. So truthfully, for me, what happened was I took a bunch of internships. I was at like Mark USA, which is a pretty good marketing firm in the city. I was one of the first people from Cal to get it, so I was really proud of that, and it was great. I think I interned also marketing at a law firm. I was doing everything I could to try to gain some experience, because truthfully, at the end, that an internship is so critical, because it can tell you, oh yeah, I really like this, I want to pursue it. But mainly from the two places that I was at, I realized I didn't like this. I wanted to do something different. So, and I didn't have to necessarily take a job and then put on my resume that I quit someplace 2 weeks in because I wasn't sure. So that's why an internship was critical. But when I graduated from college, I realized that I was like, okay, well, what do I want to do? So there was a friend who was doing some support over the web products. So pretty much he was helping people, just go ahead and, like, if they're having some computer issues, they were helping out. So I was doing this. I did this for maybe about like 4 or 5 months, and I realized this ain't for me, right? So I knew that it wasn't for me. I did what I could, but it wasn't for me. So I realized at that point, there was a moment when I said to myself that, look, I'll be broke the rest of my life, but I'm going to do something that I love. I don't really care. And that's whenever I got a job with American Eagle, because I was trying so hard to become, what they had is like an assistant buyer. And if you know about this, is like there's a program that they have, that Dick's Sporting Goods has, where they take maybe, I don't know, at the time it was like 14 people. Remember, this is also 2008. This is during like the financial crisis.
Yeah, so, right. The last one that we've gone through, right?
Exactly. So we're like, okay, here you go. Welcome to Benvenuto to like the world. So I'm like, okay, all right. So we got started. And so for me, I really wanted this corporate job that was being a buyer, this assistant buyer job. But it took a lot of time. They had a lot of resumes to go through. There was all these different factors throughout. So one thing I tried to do to keep connected to that was began to work in a retail store. Now, I had never worked in a retail store before, but I was willing to do anything because I was just so passionate and I really wanted to get involved in fashion. So what I started doing was actually, I started opening boxes. I started opening boxes in a stock room 1 day a week on like Sundays for minimum wage. I'd make like $7.15 or something an hour. And I was the happiest ever. I mean, I worked 1 day a week, and it was like a day I was looking forward to so much. The rest of the time I valet parked. I had to hold like multiple jobs in order to survive a little bit. But I knew that that was what I wanted to go to. I didn't know what exactly I was going to do, but I was like, all right, this is what I want to do. And you know, fast forward, I parlayed take like that job into, you know, trying to go to American Eagle. I went to the interview process for this assistant buying job. They told me I didn't get it. I was devastated, but I moved on. I started working in retail in Squirrel Hill for about a year, and I parlayed that to a job at Neiman Marcus in Dallas, Texas. And that was really when my career took off, because first off, to get the jobs, and this is something that, again, I'm sorry for speaking so much, but this is
you're good. This is great.
Give some advice is, my advice to people would be to be as unorthodox as possible. I know that everyone's going to tell you to do this, staple here, put this resume in here, and do. You're right. That's what you're supposed to do. But you got to think outside the box a little bit, because I don't know. I came from Cal U. And I came from Cal. I was a Pittsburgh kid. You know, people in Dallas aren't necessarily as familiar with, like, they're not just rolling the red carpet out for you. Let's put it like that.
Right.
So what I would do was I would call them on the phone. I would call the human resource people on the phone every single day. I think I did it for like 45 days or something, till the lady got so annoyed with me that she finally took me over to the human resource person. And it turned out we had a connection, blah, blah, blah. I did the test online. The lady was like, we love you. Come and interview in Dallas. So I'm like, all right, what do I got to lose? I think I was one. They said I was one of like 11,000 applicants. And they were like, oh, yeah, well, we got 3 sessions. So each session is 100 people. So they narrowed it from 11,000 to 300 people, right? So at this point, you're thinking to yourself, like, what do I have to lose? You know, I mean, like, there's nothing. I'm not supposed to get it anyway, so it's okay. So I had never been inside a Neiman Marcus prior to that. I lived in Pittsburgh. The closest one was in Philly or something. I had never even been to one. I knew that I had been working at a place called Charles Spiegel. It's in Pittsburgh. It just recently shut down, but we held a lot of brands that were very comparable. So I was familiar with some of the brands, and I knew what I wanted to do. But I mean, I had never been inside a Neiman Marcus before. So literally, I had to schedule it that I would get down there a day earlier so that I could go and just check out the store. So if somebody asked me a question, I would at least know where like the bathroom was. Okay. So I get there, and we do this interview, and it's like 2 days long. It's pretty grueling. There was a lot of things happening, a lot of interactions. They're testing you not only mathematical skills, but also your ability to work as a team, do all these things. And I don't know, by the grace of God, they were like, we hire you. We want you to work for us. So I think I was one of 39 people originally taken from that 11,000. And I was like, wow. I mean, I just was so excited. So, you know, this is 2011-ish. And in 2011, I can't remember. I don't think I actually ever saw my apartment. I just moved. So I had no friends. I had nothing. I mean, in fact, my wife, she was my girlfriend at the time, Eftahia, drove with me from Pittsburgh to Dallas. I had a roof rack on top of my car. I lost that in West Virginia. I mean, it was like an hour into the trip. I was already, so I'm literally like, that like in poker, you're all in, like I'm all in. Okay. And, you know, I spent the first couple weeks, you know, eating from a little table with one chair and plastic silverware and an air mattress and everything else. But I was just excited for the opportunity. You know, sometimes I think that's what's important is like, you know, people, they want stuff, but do they really want it? Like, do you want it bad?
Like,
I mean,
how bad do you want it? Yeah.
how bad do you want it? Are you willing to give it up? Are you willing to give up? Are you willing to give it up? Are you willing to, go away from, I mean, I didn't know one person, not one single person that lived in Dallas. I didn't know anything really about like the company in a weird way. I mean, like I was learning more, but
Right.
I wasn't so sure. My girlfriend at the time, who I, was together with for many years. Okay, bye. I mean, like, we're going to stay together, but I needed to do something for my career. She was very supportive. Thank goodness. My family, like, ciao. I mean, like, you at this point, you don't know anything. So are you willing to take those risks? And let me tell you, from taking those risks catapulted my career. But it was only because, you were willing to take the shot. I mean, like, and, you always hear Michael Jordan say it or athletes say it, but you got to take those shots to make those shots. If you, sit back and, say, oh, okay, I would have did this, or I could have done something, and you don't take the opportunities when they're in front of you, even sometimes when they're not great, as long as it's just taking the opportunity, it's really valuable, and and it can really propel you to the next thing, especially when you get out of your comfort zone, because what you find out is really how tough you are. There's a lot of people that say, like, the concept of tough can be a little, like, I'm not saying to be like, masculine version of it. I'm saying, like, mentally, how tough are you?
Mental fortitude. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Like, when your back is against the wall like that, what you realize, which is amazing, is that you're not scared anymore. You're not scared anymore. And when you quit being scared, you become transcendent. After that, nothing can stop you. Legitimately, nothing feels too big. When I was living in Pittsburgh, and a lot of my friends who are like my day one people, my day one homies who I love so much, and they're great, they're amazing. It's hard to take those first steps, right? But when you do take that first step, all of a sudden that second step's easy, and the third step's even easier, and the fourth step is, I'm living right now, I'm in Florence. I could have never been in Florence going straight from Pittsburgh, right? So
Right.
I needed to go from here to Dallas, and I was in Dallas for about 2 years, and I learned so much. And I started as an assistant buyer in men's shoes and leather goods, and I've kind of stayed throughout men's shoes and leather goods my whole career. But it's just because, when we go back, like, just to repeat one thing to some of the students, when you graduate from college and you're trying to figure out, okay, look, I got a business degree. Like, it's nice plaque. All right, this is great. I'm glad Cal has assisted me this far. But now it's on you, and you have to ask yourself, like, what do you seriously love? I mean, when I say love, I mean, what are you willing to work for them not to even pay you? Like, they don't even have to give you $1.
That's
and
right.
you're just so passionate about it. You love it so much. Right? Like, for me, like, opening boxes and feeling sweaters and being around fashion was so nice. Like, I didn't care what the paycheck was. I don't even remember seeing it. I was just like, oh, I'm just so excited to be here. And then it was like, okay, well, now we're going to ask you to be, do something sales associate wise. Then we want you to do visual. Then all these things began to start to come from it, just because you were passionate about it. But one of the key factors of it is asking yourself, like, I spend a lot of my day working on almost like a psychological concept, because I'm constantly finding myself in the shoes of somebody else. I'm constantly having to look at product and look at things in a different light, not necessarily what my heart is saying, but potentially what my mind is saying, of being in the mind of someone else. Okay. So one of the things that I really believe in is some of these pivotal years that you have as you grow up. I didn't have a psychology degree, but this is what I've developed and learned is, these things when you're, you know who you are when you're 11, when you're 12, when you're 13, when you're 14 years old, 15, those things that you loved, it was never about money, never about money. It was always just because you just were like, you would just hoop until the lights would go out, right? You just were obsessed with something, right?
Yeah.
And my theory on it is like, I'm a big time Jay-Z fan, and he'll tell you, you can try to change, but that's just the top layer, right? So the inside to me is telling me, like, all right, I know when I shed away everything and I quit thinking about all the other stuff, the thing that I loved the most was sneakers, right? So I loved kicks when I grew up. Like that was to me such an important factor in my life. And I was like, look, that's what I want to do. I just want to be involved in it some way, somehow. And that was like how the fashion thing started to go. And it just so happened that, you know, I ended up starting to work in Neiman Marcus as a buyer in men's shoes. And I'm starting to buy like Balenciaga and, you know, Ferragamo and, you know, just, I mean, everybody under the sun, Margiela's, Gucci's, Prada, like everybody. And look, I'm just some street kid from Pittsburgh, right? So
Right,
I'm
right.
thinking to myself, this is too good to be true. I can't believe they pay you to do this. Like, this is amazing. So, but they taught me a heck of a lot. And it wasn't just the fashion part and the sneaker part. I had that part down. What I didn't have down and what I didn't understand was truly the business side of it. And when you get done working in a program like that, because this is like a program, you're there for 3 months and they are teaching you constantly, like you're being tested constantly. It's not easy, right? I remember going through all of like the different, every day you'd have to go introduce yourself and be like, my name's Chris Buffington. You know, I'm from Pittsburgh. I went to California University of Pennsylvania. Everybody was like, oh, is that this place, that place? And I'm like, it's in Pennsylvania. It's right here, you know, and try to put it on the map a little bit. And you were around people that superior, or people that, in my opinion, were, I mean, just top level talent, speak 3 different languages, just really, really smart people. And for you to be able to compete in that circumstance, it really, again, it fills you with this level of confidence. Like, if I can do it here, I can do anything, right? So it was able to really, really progress, and it pushed from there. I just as a little second point. So after I left Neiman Marcus, I went from there to New York City. So I started working in New York City. I worked for a brand called Jimmy Choo. Obviously, a lot of women are pretty familiar with it. And trust me, every one of my aunts still to this day is telling me what size they wear. And I'm like,
I bet you get all the requests for the hookups too, right?
oh
People
my
come out.
gosh. Yeah, my aunt Renee, she's got a slightly little bit of wider foot. She's asking me for like, can they custom this, that, the other? I'm going, Aunt Renee, like, I love you, but you know, we just don't have that stuff laying around. It's not so easy. But you know, it was a great experience because I kind of transitioned. So before, what I was doing was, when you're doing something in retail, pretty much I'm not creating any product. I'm showing up and I'm expecting you to have created it, and I'm going to buy the right products of your assortment. I'm not going to take everything. I'm going to take, I don't know, you have 100 shoes here. I'm going to pick 10. Okay. And of those 10, I'm going to invest, I don't know, at times, a couple million on these shoes. So a significant amount of money. And I'm going to put them throughout 40 stores in the country. That's what I would do at Neiman's. Now I transitioned from there to being on the opposite side. One of the brands that I worked with was Jimmy Choo. And now all of a sudden I work for Jimmy Choo. So now I am contacting my old boss and asking him to buy more Jimmy Choo and maybe less Balenciaga, right? So these are the differences between a wholesale and the retail. And I got a chance to live in New York City to do it. I traveled to Milan 4 times a year. I traveled through all the US constantly. So what happened was when you can have this background of like, okay, I'm learning a lot and I'm stationed in Dallas, and I know the consumer in Beverly Hills because I'm reading constantly the numbers and I'm seeing all this stuff. Well, now all of a sudden I transitioned to my second job to, I'm in Beverly Hills a couple times a year. I'm in Miami a couple times a year. I'm in Chicago. I'm in all these places throughout the country. When you start to put all of that together, because it's not just numbers, it's also being on the floor, seeing the people, like, you got to hear it, you got to smell it, you got to taste it. Why are they going after this instead of that? These sales associates are really great, like building relationships. There's a whole factor behind all this, right? So it was something that was really cool and interesting. But I was there for only about a year until I got called back to become a buyer for a store called Bergdorf Goodman. Bergdorf Goodman is, this isn't me saying this, I'd probably say arguably it's probably the top, if not the top 3 easily, most high luxury stores in the world. And it's on 59th and 5th, right there in the
I've
heart
been
of
there
Manhattan.
one time.
Yeah, it's
It's nice, man. You're not lying.
Yeah, I mean, it's an impressive place with a crazy history. I mean, it's just amazing. Actually, Neiman Marcus owns Bergdorf Goodman, so there was some connections to assist here and there. But for the most part, it was an opportunity I couldn't pass up, just because I really wanted to transition back into more of this retail setting from wholesale. And the reason why was because I really wanted to. I wanted to be able to use my math, like the math skills, in addition to the fashion skills. And you learn that so much more from a retail standpoint when you're being a buyer, because what they teach you is really, like, at this point, I don't mean to say this to be any bit cocky or any bit arrogant, but I feel confident going into a lumber business, going into a nail business, going into lights. It doesn't matter what it is, because at the end, it's all the same principles and the same philosophy when it comes to the actual business side of it. So I really wanted to keep sharpening those skill set for myself. And I did that, and so now I'm back to buying. So now, I'm in Milan now about 6 times a year. I'm in Paris about 4 times a year. And I'm also traveling to different places in Italy and doing product development now. It's because at that store you did product development. So now I'm starting to work with some vendors and create real products into these nooks and cranny places that you've never heard of or seen in Italy. So it was a really interesting experience. And from that opportunity, it transitioned to someone at Ferragamo noticing that, and they said, "Look, you want to move to Florence and do this full time in a different capacity, only on this side. Now you keep transitioning forward. Now you really are the whiteboard. Now you are, like, it's a blank sheet. You guys create it, and then all of a sudden those other people, what my old jobs were, the buyers, come in to buy the product that you created." And I do that about 4 times a year. Obviously, it's, when I say I create it, I mean I work with a tremendous team that I'm a part of. So it's a really interesting experience. But I have to travel constantly. You always are in Asia, you're in Latin America, all these places, because you're always around the stores and you're also around the people. So anyway, that's everything of career path wise. So sorry, I was a little long.
No, that's cool. And it's cool to see, my experience with retail is at American Eagle at the Uniontown Mall, in high school. But it's cool to see, like, how all that came together from, source to the design side. And you've kind of lived and experienced that. So it's real cool to see that. And we're very proud of everything you've accomplished. And I know, like, and going back to, like, that passion thing, I mean, I think that's it, when you're in something that you're passionate about, and you're doing it, whether it's, from that opening boxes, entry-level stockroom, if you're still passionate about it, good things will come as long as you persist. And I think you're a prime example,
I appreciate it.
And it's awesome to see, man. Absolutely. So, all right.
So,
yeah. No, go ahead.
I was just going to point out the one thing was that, it doesn't matter. Like, people in this society, people get so obsessed with money. Look, I love money too. I mean, like, to buy stuff, it's obvious. But I think that when your judgment starts getting clouded by, like, just worrying about the end instead of, like, the process, you're not going to get to where you want to be. You have to think of the concept that everybody in any business that they're doing, at the end, there's people getting paid, like, pretty well. So money is out there. It's just a matter, like, you can't be, like, so concerned about that final part of it, because you don't realize the long hours, the days, the times whenever it's, like, thankless stuff that you're doing. So you have to keep that, like, that fire alive and that engine going. And I'm telling you, it's not going to be about green. It's going to be just about, like, you loving what you're doing. So, but know that if you work hard and you figure it out, like, you're going to be fine. It's just a matter of don't be putting, like, if you put the cart before the horse in a way, you're going to find yourself in probably a challenging position.
No, agreed. But, you also can't knock the hustle. So, right.
Yeah.
That's it. All right. So lightning round here for our Cal U fun stuff. We'll kind of transition there. This is the running gag on the podcast, right? It's like our tradition, and reminding you that this is the PG-13 version of the podcast. We're not rated R yet. Do you have a favorite, like, outside of class memory from Cal U? And I know it's a tough question. I'll probably put you on the spot. there's probably too many memories to recall, and maybe some memories that you don't recall, but were still very good. I know I have a few of those myself. But is there one maybe that sticks out more than the others?
Yeah, 100%. It was so there was one evening that I find myself at some party, right? I didn't want to go, and it was the house. I think it's called Big Red. All right, so I'm at this house, and I'm there for a short period of time. I swear I was thinking about already leaving. I didn't see too many of the people I knew, and one person that I run into is Justin Leader, and so I mean I'm sure Leader's been on here. You know, Leader.
Yeah, yeah, he was at a season one guest.
Mr. Cal, you know, I love it.
He is.
So Leader, he's just being the guy he is and the connector that he is. He says to me, I think this girl, she was about to leave, and before she left, he turned to her and he said, her name was Eftahia. He's like, oh, Eftahia, do you know this guy, Chris Buffington? And she said, no, I don't know him. And we introduced one another, and I was like, what was your name? She said, Eftahia. I said, you got to say that one more time. I'm not too familiar, but she's like, oh, it's a Greek name, and truthfully, the rest is history. And since that moment, we've been together. So I would say definitely me and my wife was number one.
That might be my favorite Cal U couple story right there. That's pretty good, man. We enjoy it, and you're winning bonus points with F here, I'm sure. Absolutely. Okay, so we're building Cal U's ultimate party playlist for release later this fall. What is the one song that reminds you most of your time at Cal U?
Song, man, you're crushing me on one song.
You got more than one. We could take two, probably.
All right. So again, these go back to some of the people who are the most influential to me. One, I would say, from my one friend Dale Kreller, I would say Danny California from Red Hot Chili Peppers. It came out in 2006. We drove crazy distance to buy the CD. We didn't even want to get it on LimeWire at the time. All right, so it was really important. And the next one I would probably say was Can't Tell Me Nothing is by Kanye. I can just see my friend The Big Show, Jake Armstrong, dancing to that song, singing, and that's the first thing that pops into my head.
No, I will second that, because that whole Graduation album, I lived on 2nd Street when it came out, and we had this like baby boombox, like crap quality, and we would just post up on the porch on the 2nd floor like that whole summer, and just like from like 7 a.m. it would be Good Morning, and that would bump like a little bit of porch drinking or whatever, and that was like a whole sound. That's a whole mood right there, as the kids say these days. So no, that's pretty good. All right, so we'll add that to the playlist for sure. Now this question might be a little loaded, and I think we could go. We may ask you on all your world travel. So first, on the great food debate, what's the best meal you had at Cal U? And that could be either on campus or off campus. And then, as a follow-up to that, what's the best thing you've ever eaten in all of your travels?
Gosh. All right. So in Cal, I would say I got to give you two things but they're both involving loggerheads. All right. So one is, I have no idea what Mark and Joy put inside that lager sauce, but to this day, I mean, it's unbelievable. I swear it's like something addictive inside of it. It's so good. We actually, FT and I, we went back to Loggerheads last December, and just to hang out with Mark and Joy, and it was just a great time. They're such good people. But the second part would be because F worked actually at Loggerheads.
Right, I remember that.
So they would have wing night. And so after her shift, she would buy just plain wings, right? Because that was the deal. We wanted nothing on them. So just plain. And would bring them back to 424 in Jefferson. And Jason Swerzinski, we don't actually to this day know what he did as far as recipe wise. There was like lime, there was hot sauce, there was all these things, right? And you're thinking to yourself, all right, this is going to be terrible. You have to be almost intoxicated to get this down. But it was, truthfully, until I moved to Italy, probably my favorite meal of all time. It was unbelievable. So Shout out to Ski and his famous wings. They haven't been on retail yet, but one day I think he'll put it together. But
I was gonna say we need that recipe because we're compiling this like Cow U cookbook, and we might need to. I mean, that might need to be in the sauce section, man, for sure.
He's gonna. If I was him, I'd probably charge you, definitely a couple bucks to get it to you. But from food wise, all over the world, oh my gosh, there's so many. But I will tell you, two like really ones that have been special. One is, so in Shanghai there is a dish that that only comes about in October and November, and it's called hairy crab. Okay, and pretty much what happens is that these crabs, they beef up to get ready for the winter, and they are a delicacy there, specifically in Shanghai, and it's a Shanghaiese delicacy. And they take the meat actually, and they wrap them in dumplings, so you have dim sum with it.
Ooh, okay.
I remember the first time I had it, I think like my whole face just went numb. I quit talking. It was the best thing I ever tasted in my life. And I think I made them go back like 3 times, my colleagues, because I was just so in love with it. From China, which was unbelievable. And then I would probably say I have just a favorite dish in Italy, and it's called Tagnatelli Con Tortufo. It's like it's a thin pasta with truffles, and it's very famous. It's like very traditional here, and normally truffles it's super expensive everywhere. In Italy, it's very common, so it's not very expensive. But it's a dish that is simple, but it's phenomenal, and there's a couple places here that do it really well. So those are my dishes.
Oh, that's awesome. I have a personal question. Have you found the Florentine equivalent of the chuck wagon?
You know what? Here, no, because in Italy, breakfast is not important. So you actually don't eat breakfast. What breakfast is a cafe, like a coffee, and it's an espresso, and a croissant. And you either can get basically a basic croissant, or you can get one with Nutella inside of it, and you say basta, meaning no more, nothing else. So that's it. So breakfast is one meal that America just absolutely takes the gold on, because there's nothing like chuck wagon. In fact, actually, every year that we've been in Italy, when we come home, we've always go to chuck wagon at least one time for breakfast and hook up a number 1 or number 2. They have to.
That's it, man. You got it. And thankfully, they're still open, and they're doing takeout during COVID.
Oh,
here.
really?
Yes.
Oh.
Still available for the kids that are in California. So
thank goodness. They need that.
That's it, man. That's it. Well, again, Chris, I want to thank you, man, for taking time out of your day. I know you're busy, everything going on. To be here on the podcast, this was a great talk, man. I really enjoyed connecting with you. And I think there's a lot of good stuff here that our students, our alumni, especially like our young emerging alumni, can probably take and really apply to their passions too. So I can't thank you enough for being here today, man.
I appreciate it very much. Yeah, I honestly, like just as like a departing note and whatnot, I would probably just, again, a little piece of advice I would say is just things that I noticed a lot is, I feel like a lot of times what I see in society at times are that people get too hung up on maybe things that they're not, or like like deficiencies they might have. Everyone's like worrying about, oh, okay, well, I'm not this, I'm not that, I'm not this. I feel like if people just focus a lot more on what they are good at and who they are, and don't worry about the rest, and just keep it moving. It's almost like, if you like in a basketball standpoint, if you love to shoot 3-point shots, keep shooting threes. Don't worry about the other aspects of the game. So keep doing what you're good at, and don't get so hung up on maybe some things like, okay, I'm not this and I'm not that. Who cares? Focus in on those few things that you've been given gifts of, and just explore them more hard.
No, that's awesome. And thanks for sharing that parting note. Before we sign off though, real quick, maybe some students that are interested in fashion, or alumni that want to reconnect or connect with you. Is there a good way to do that?
Of course. I mean, I'm pretty active on social media, so you can always get in touch with me. Like, Instagram if you chose, or Facebook, or LinkedIn. But again, if you just look up Chris Buffington, it will pop up, I'm sure. There's not too many out there, I guess. But if anybody needs anything, you know, I'm always somebody pretty quick to respond about it, because I personally know I know the feeling. You know, I remember when I started in this career, I had literally no one to contact, and I didn't know what to do next. So any way to give back, I'd love to help them do so.
Awesome. Well, again, for Chris Buffington, I'm Ryan Barnhart. This is the Vulcan Nation. We'll catch you next time.